Hi everyone, I'm Laura Sheehan, here today with Reza Varzidehkar, who goes by Reza Vee. Reza is a startup founder based out of Vancouver, a third generation entrepreneur and an adventurer. His most recent adventure was taking on 100 networking events in 100 days. Reza, welcome. We can't wait to hear all about this incredible idea.
Thank you for having me, Laura.
Well, could you start off today by telling us a little bit about this 100 networking and events in 100 days? What brought that on? How did that even become an idea for you?
So I'm Reza Vee. Thank you for introducing me. I'm the founder of OVU Business Card, and I came up with the idea a while ago, and then the whole project started around August 2019. And by the time we got the ball rolling and we were closer to launch, I thought to myself, I need to become the number one user of my own product before I have the audacity to sell it to anybody or expect anybody to buy it. And in November 2019, I decided to do this crazy idea of attending 100 networking events in 100 days. And to be honest, partly it was because I wanted to build my network and I was hitting two birds with one stone. So I went out there, I tried my product and did my research. I got to know wonderful people, and I learned throughout the whole 100 days.
And when we spoke before, you mentioned that this was kind of a different approach to market research.
Absolutely. So I had a lot of people telling me this is not how you're supposed to do it. This was something I had the intuition of doing, but a lot of people were like, if you want to do market research, you do it through surveys. If you want to do marketing, you do ads and you do A/B testing. And this is just not how a startup launches. You're supposed to be behind the computer and talking to developers, and that's what you're supposed to do. But I stuck with my own intuition, even though for the first 60 events there was not real results from this. I was doubting myself many times, and a lot of people were looking at me like, "What the heck are you doing out here? You're attending 100 event. Like, what do you do again? What's your business?" I've had a lot of that at the beginning, but I held myself accountable to do all the 100 events that I aimed to do, and then look back and decide whether it was a good idea or not. And that was the best thing I did, because I could have easily gone to 20 events and say, this is stupid, I'm wasting so much time, I should be back in behind the computer and launch my product in the way that I'm supposed to do. But I'm glad I didn't. I'm glad I stuck to the whole journey.
So when you were at each event, you had your beta test of your OVU card with you. And you were talking to people about the product and you were seeking their input and their advice, but not at all trying to sell.
That's exactly right. So I put myself in a very unique position, and that was number one. I picked the events that I tried to pick the events that it interests me one way or another. Either it was about startups or marketing, and then the third priority was small businesses, because that's my target market. And then there were some days that I ended up picking a random event because I ran out of other events, and I went to insurance events. I went to immigrants coming to Canada, and they needed to get some help. I went to construction events, lots of variety of events. I put myself in a unique position in terms of I didn't have a product that I wanted to sell. I just wanted to share my passion and talk to people. And the moment I walked into these events, I was in vacation. I was just talking to people. I let the curiosity take the wheel, and there was no hidden agenda. As soon as I left the event, I had lots of phone calls and making sure developers doing the right thing, making sure everything's in place to do our launch. But the moment I went to the event, it was just talking to another human being and getting curious about how they're making money, how they're going about their business. And to this day, it's super fascinating to me how each person is doing something different, and they're passionate about different things.
I love a few key words that you just said. And I'm going to run through really fast. Curiosity, you mentioned a couple times. Vacation, which is never linked to networking. And then that you were smiling when you're talking about all of the events that you attended. And I think the other key component is interest, that you tried to pick events that, even though they weren't related to your work or necessarily to the OVU card concept at all, that you picked events that were just interesting to you,
Mhm.
which is so great, because then when you get there, you have natural things to ask about and to talk about that aren't pressure filled, that allow conversation to flow easily and removes that awkwardness that you have so often in networking events. The idea too that you're attending these things with an open mind and a curious heart really opens things up for serendipity.
Mhm.
And you said too in one of your bios that your superpower is your ability to draw attention to and connect in a meaningful way through authenticity. I think you've given us a few glimpses into how you do that, but can you talk a little bit more about your approach to those
So
events?
I always I'm always I've always been a firm believer that you've got to lean into your strength. And I knew, I had this feeling that for me it makes sense to go out there and meet people. That is something I can do and I get excited about doing. And to be honest, met many people that their boss made them go networking, or the nature of their business, they have no choice. They have to go networking to get clients. They wish clients came through email and Google ads and whatnot, but they're in the stages of their business that they have to hustle and go out there. And you can read that in their faces. Whereas for me, nobody told me to go networking. I wanted to be there. I wanted to do this whole journey. I wanted to go meet people. And even and the cool thing is, because there's something magnetic about the way you put yourself out there. So people were telling me about all sorts of events. People were like, there's a Christmas party, you should go. There's this, you have to go. So for like 20th event or 17th event, I go to this Christmas party that is all small business owners. I'm still networking, I'm still talking to people. And people were surprised that, I have this drive to meet a new person and get to know them, and I'm not selling them anything. And it was somewhat questionable for them. Looking back now, I see this has been my strength all along. Ever since I was a kid, I was the type of kid that ran into a room and lit up the entire room, and everybody were, waiting for Reza to come in and make us laugh, or tell us a joke or something. I was that energetic, like a fireball coming in all the family gatherings. And that's been my strength, and I'm glad that I followed my intuition, because that is what I could do better than anything else. Had I not have, like, for people who don't have that, I would say find what you're good at. What's your strength, instead of forcing yourself into a framework where, oh, like at the 100th event, I hosted my own OVU launch, which wasn't planned. 60 events in, I thought it might be a good idea, and I put it together, and it magically happened. But I did a presentation, and in there, I was so worried that people are looking at me saying, he did 100 events, I want to do that. And I said, you're supposed to do what you are good at, or what your strength is. I'm not here to tell you go out there, do 100 events, because that may not be a good idea. You can learn pieces from my story that applies, and it may give you a leg up, or it may open up a perspective. But by no means I'm trying to get people to do crazy amount of networking and go meet thousands of people. that's not my message.
Well, tell us what your biggest takeaways were, and what can people learn from your incredible experience?
So I observed a lot of people hiding behind their professions. Um, there are a lot of people who associate themselves with their job title or with what they do, and there is this conversation that I've had over hundreds of times that it starts with, "So what do you do?" And you get that on that highway of this conversation that you get stuck on, and then you can't really deviate from that. And I'm trying to remind people that you are bigger than what you do. You're way bigger than what you do, and you may not even realize how bigger you are than what you do. What you do is a piece of that puzzle or a piece of you that matters, but people are thirsty to connect with the person you are, not really your profession. And it's so funny how ironic those two were, because I watched a lot of people who were thirsty to connect with a real human being with vulnerabilities, with someone authentic, but at the same time they were the ones that were hiding behind their own mask, and they were putting forward their job titles and trying to showcase that. And I came with this vulnerability, and I tried to show people that my vulnerability is more recognized than the status that you think is higher. So most people think when they say they worked at Google, that is here. If they say I'm John, that doesn't really stick. I'm here to say John is way bigger than working at Google. Working at Google is just a title. Ex Google employee is just a job title. Whereas John is a real human being. We want to learn more about John. Um, and I tried at every conversation to quickly um, one, allowing people to better understand me. I'm really good at expressing myself and allowing them to peel off layer by layer and get to the core. And I wanted to do the same with them. And some people were more willing, and I had an easier time of talking about their passion and their interests. And some people had this guard, but I've had few different people that, by the third time I met them at different events, their guards were down, and I could have a real talk with them. So that was a very interesting observation from all this journey. And then right after doing the entire 100 events, I started talking about these more and more on a podcast I started with someone actually I met at these events. And one of the guests on the podcast said, what you're talking about, Reza, is social capital. And in Silicon Valley, it's a huge topic. Everybody's, reading about it. And I didn't know anything about social capital. And then I went and read a book on it, and I started researching, and I realized everything I've been experiencing and talking about, there is a concept on it, and I didn't know about it. So that's another thing I'm learning and going by.
There's so much fantastic stuff to unpack here. And I have to start with this great concept that your name, your true identity, is greater and more important than your title. And the reason that I think is the first point that I want to bring out of all of the great information that you just delivered is that I myself got stuck there because for so long I wanted to be Laura the lawyer. And so when people would ask me what I did, I'd say, well, I'm a lawyer. But then my family moved and I had to leave my job behind. And then when people would ask me that question, what do you do? I'd say, I was a lawyer. I'm a wife, I'm a mom, and I try to come up with all these different titles to cover what I was doing right there. And it really brought down my confidence and made me feel terrible about myself. And so many people that are going to be listening to this interview are in that same position. And it's so important to realize that it's not the title, that it's what you're working towards, it's what you're working on, it's the dream that you hope to aspire one day, and that every one of these opportunities, that to meet someone is an opportunity to plant that seed and to make it a reality. So I'd love to know too, then, because here I went and I introduced you with all of your titles as the startup, and entrepreneur. And so, how did you introduce yourself at these events?
Oh, many different ways, and try to kind of find this happy medium. And I didn't know, like a lot of times I was passionate about what I was doing, so I said I'm Reza, I'm doing 100 events in 100 days, and I thought that's super cool. And then 10 events later, I'm like, shit, people must be thinking, why, or what is it that you? So then I started changing that to say I'm Reza Vee, founder of Ovu. And then I quickly switched to I'm doing 100 events to inspire people to think about networking differently. And then I A/B tested and I went forward with that. But right now I feel like, as much as I'm dedicated to Ovu, I'm dedicated to the message Reza V has, which is about social capital and building your social circles and auditing your friends and all that good stuff. So I'm going with both, and I put both of them forward. The other thing is, isn't it fascinating how when we meet someone new, we judge ourselves on their behalf before they even had the chance to meet us. So often we quickly go in our brain, what are they thinking about us? How do I look? What are they gonna say behind my back? They haven't even said anything, and we're judging ourselves too quickly. I think one of the most important things that a person can do for themselves and in their professional life is having the ability not to judge themselves, and if they get judged, not to care about that because that person doesn't know them 100%.
Agreed 100% that it's so important to be able to embrace who you are in the here and now. Because
Mm,
all of the steps that each of us have taken have brought us to exactly where we are and have made us who we are. And it's not ever something to be embarrassed about because, as you're saying too, even with introductions, you start out doing one thing, then, oh, that wasn't working perfectly. I'm going to try another thing. And you're also tweaking for the audience and for who you're interacting with in that moment.
yeah, yeah,
So let's dig into social capital.
yes.
Tell us about what you have learned and the overall concept and how OVU fits into all of that.
So where it got clear to me what social capital is, I was reading about it, and there are three different types of capital mainly that we have. One is financial capital, all the homes and financial assets that you might own. Then we have human capital, which is our abilities and education and skills, or even degrees that we possess. And then it's social capital is your access, the accumulation of your entire social circles, capitals, and the access you have to those. So, for example, if my friend is a lawyer and I ask them to review a contract that I just wrote, I'm tapping into my social capital. And had I not have, if I didn't have that friend, I would have, I needed to pay someone to review that contract. So your social circle or your network possess all these three types of network, from financial capital to human capital, and their own social capitals, and you have access to them based on your relation and your relationship with them. So that really clarified for me. And when I was reading this book called Social Capital 2.0, which Professor Mask, he wrote it, and I'm super excited. I'm interviewing him end of this week about it. So he wrote down how he brought up a lot of other scholars who are looking into this, and he wrote how even wealthy people, when they have lots of success, we seem to think about it as, it's their wealth that give them more success, rich getting richer. But oftentimes we see billionaires getting bankrupt and then they bounce back. President Trump is one prime example. These people are leveraging their social capital. When they're bankrupt, when they're at bottom, zero, or they're in debt, they have these connections because they made it over a long period of time, or even their parents made it, and they can actually tap into them and leverage those connections. So social capital works even more powerful. It's even more powerful than having money. Like if you had $100,000 with no network, or if you had $0 with a very strong network, that network quickly gets you to that financial position. So that was very eye-opening for me. And then one way for I want your audience to do this exercise if they get a chance. It's really cool if you can write down the last 10 people that you met recently or you talked to recently, even not really met, you talked to recently. For example, your mom, your spouse, your coworker, whoever. And then you start drawing lines between them and you, that's your connection, and them and whoever else they know in that 10 people. And then you can even put an arrow between people that you connected in that circle that you drew, and you quickly see what is your role in that network, those arrows, and the relationships everybody has to each other. If people are entangled to each other like a spider web, that is called bonding capital, which means those are your supportive groups. For example, your family, your close friends. If you're in law, other lawyers, those are supportive groups. These people are there for you when you fall. Think about it as a net that catches you when you fall. So these people catch you when you fall. And if there are rough times like now with COVID, these are the support groups that you need. And people naturally make bonding capital. What most people are missing is bridging capital. Bridging relationships are the ones that is between one group to a totally different group that you don't have a lot of people that necessarily. So for example, if you're in law, somebody who is in marketing, or somebody who is complete opposite, or a different race, different ethnicity, different age, complete out of your circle. These people help you grow. These people connect you with new circles, and these are your bridge between you and new opportunities. So ever since I did this exercise, I'm more conscious of what my circle looks like, and I need to audit my entire circle. I would love to take a few hours to write down, instead of 10, write down like 100 people that I know, and try to audit if somebody's taking too much of my time, somebody's not shouldn't be so close to me, but is because I'm friends with them since high school or something. I need to slowly audit my friends and adjust. Or if there is someone in the circle that I want to, or I wish I had a better relationship, I need to pay more attention to. Or maybe I'm missing more bridging relationships in, let's say, startups or in different categories. I need to be more conscious of what that looks like. And we all have it, but we don't really think about them. It just happened. You just had your friends. You never thought about, do I have a good network, or what are the weaknesses? That to me is social capital, and that's what I've learned so far.
Awesome.
I don't want to
I
talk too
mean,
much. I think
nope.
I've gone over
I
a
could listen
lot.
all day. And again, I'm pulling out some key points. I'm like taking notes like this
Yes,
as your
yes.
time. So number one, what I love about this concept too is something that people talk about in networking generally, but in a new from a new perspective, and that of social capital. when you were talking at the beginning about how social capital is essentially being able to trade skills and trade connections or offer access points.
Mhm.
And I think the key there is that naturally people want to help, especially people that they know. I mean, maybe not strangers. You have to have that connection somehow. But if I go to a friend or a neighbor or someone that I have some kind of relationship with, and I say, "Listen, I know this is crazy, but I really need X. Is there any way that you could help me, or is there someone that you know who helps, who could give me this one little bit of information?" People are always wanting to say yes if they can. The other thing that really came out when you were talking about both the bonding capital and bridging capital, and I wrote down for bonding capital, and kind of if you're looking at the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that bonding capital really addresses the base need of security,
Mhm.
having a safety net that if you fall, somebody's going to catch you. And then what I love about the bridging capital is that it's a little bit higher up on that pyramid of needs. And I wrote down growth because that is where you're going to get that springboard to new opportunities and to new adventures. And I think between the two, and really in the bridging capital, and when you were talking about auditing your networks, I love how the structure addresses both the need for diversity
Mhm.
and that it's strategic relationships. So
You need you need the balance of both, and the moment you have too much bonding relationships, then racism becomes an issue, or disregarding another group because you are in your bubble. And
right.
when you have too much bridging relationships, you don't have your close allies or close friends that can support you when you need them. So one of the things I've been noticing is with immigrants. I went through this. A lot of other people are going through this. I'm sure you, when you had to move abroad, you felt the same. You quickly look for people that look similar to you. So similar experiences. I came from Iran. I looked for Iranians in Vancouver, people who are going to school or college, or they're similar to me. As soon as there's that similarity, then we become friends, and then you have this base of bonding relationships and bonding capital where it supports you if, when, or things go wrong, and you need support. And it's more of an instinct. And then people get stuck in that, and then 10 years go by, and I see silos in Vancouver where Iranians are together, Chinese are together, Indians are together, and they never put the effort to get out of their comfort zone to make relationships with people that had nothing to do with them. When I went to that construction meeting, I had absolutely nothing in common with people in that room, but it got me out of my comfort zone. It got me introduced to new concept, new way of thinking, people who are from different backgrounds, people who are builders, and that's their job, and it's different than me. And that might be just a one day interaction, or I might meet someone that follows up in some other way. And you brought up serendipity, and things might happen. But you need to get some sort of weak tie, even though even a weak tie would allow you to access different circles, and if you need, and that helps you grow.
Yes. Well, and I want to ask you too, if you could tell us, you were talking about auditing your networking and building
Yes.
your circles. Okay, here we are in COVID, right? And we're all stuck inside. And where we could have, I mean, and thank goodness you got the 100 networking events in 100 days
Yeah, I
right
was
before.
lucky.
That was lucky. Um, we don't have the same ability to go out and meet people like we in person like we did before.
Yes. Yes.
And tied into that too, so this will be a two-layer question. So how do we do it now? And go ahead, let's go with that one first. How do we do it now?
So I've been trying to answer the same question, and I went to few virtual events on Zoom and different webinars, and it's really difficult to do the networking part. So with networking events, you have the content, whatever speaker or webinar or workshop you're going through, and then afterwards you shared that experience with someone next to you, and that gives you a chance to leverage that and talk to them. Online, it's the second part is missing. You have that shared experience, but you don't get a chance to share it because everybody can't talk at the same time, and when you talk, everybody's listening to you. You don't want to make a fool out of yourself, so you choose not to talk. So that is missing on online, uh, so called networking events. The second option, which I quite like, is finding conversations online, and you can do it all day. That's the beauty of internet. Go on your favorite social media and search for the hashtags, or on forums, or on Reddit, or on Quora, which you people ask questions. You find a conversation and you jump in with comment and you add your 2 cents, as if it's in real life and some two people are talking and you have something to say. So for example, if you're a lawyer and there is somebody asking for advice, or somebody's debating on some new law that is coming out or whatnot, you can jump in there and be part of that discussion. I can talk about social capital in where, find where people are talking about these stuff. For example, I've been looking for conversations around social media's role in social capital. And there's a huge debate. Some people are hating social media, some people loving it, and there's a debate. And I jump in there and I add my 2 cents or my opinion. That allows for people to click on your profile, check you out, and send you a DM. I've had so many times that people were like, I saw your comment there. I thought this was very interesting. I just wanted to reach out and say XYZ. So that I find is very powerful way of doing networking. For me, when I started hosting a podcast with another person I met through these events, and he's my co-host, I found that I can get deeper into a conversation when we have a guest on the show. So normally I would have called someone and said, "Hey, I would love to chat with you on Zoom or something," and it would have been really hard to get them for half an hour to an hour. Whereas now I'm like, "There's a podcast." We bring them that person to the podcast, and then we get really deep on different conversations, and it's been an amazing networking tool for us. Those two are the main ways I'm doing it so far. And I'm sure there are other ways to do it online.
That's actually a really good point. And as you were talking, I was thinking too about how even I met you. That
Hmm.
the way that happened was that I connected, actually, someone reached out to me who is a current lawyer who is launching a fantastic business about helping lawyers find fulfillment in their work.
Nice.
And she was talking about the webinars and networking events that she was launching, wanted to know about my experience transitioning from law into another career, and said, "Oh my gosh, you've got to hear about this guy, Reza Vee." And I said, "Yes, I do." And then I reached out to you through social media and you responded, and it went from there. And in some ways, social media makes it easier to connect because instead of walking into a room full of strangers that you know
Mhm.
nothing about,
Mhm.
you're walking into a place where you can gather key bits of data on the person so that you know whether or not you want to start up a conversation and how to do that. Which then, of course, leads me directly into Ovu
Yes.
and this great product that you are putting out into the world. Tell us all about that.
So Ovu is I went with the mindset of I don't want to have a piece of paper representing me. I know I'm bigger than the phone number on a piece of paper, and I'm putting myself out. And back to your comment, this is the beauty of putting yourself out there. And I know I'm putting myself out there on all these social media platforms, and I want to share that with people I meet. So I thought of different ways to stand out and different ways to do that. And this Ovu card was my way. And you simply tap on a phone and then it pops up your profile. And then as I did this 100-day journey and I started talking to people and getting beta users, I realized quickly that salespeople are having a lot of traction on this product, and then started brainstorming with a marketing mentor I have, and I realized this end of the day is a marketing tool for people to present themselves and get their business out there, especially for those who are not established enough to have a complicated marketing structure with Google ads and Facebook and lots of things going on. The people who are starting out, they just want a business card and brochures and get out there and meet people and showcase their business. And even though I'm not a salesperson, or I don't like the whole idea of selling, but I like to influence people that are selling or generating leads in a way to brand themselves, and this card allows them to present themselves in a more I guess meaningful way, because one of the philosophies I have, and I keep talking about it with our developer, is I want people to be able to showcase themselves in a single mobile page and no longer than that. So we have all these social presence online with LinkedIn, Instagram, lots of scrolls, lots of information. I want all of that packed into a single web page on a mobile phone, and then people get to decide to learn more about you and click on that. So that's what I'm doing. It's in a small way, contributing in that whole social capital thing. The other day, actually, my marketing mentor was telling me most people have a business idea, but they're trying to figure out how to impact the world. You know what your impact should be. You're just trying to figure out the business. So that's the path I'm on.
That is fantastic. So, and to sum up then, the OVU card is a business card plus more, where you've got a one page, essentially like a one pager of you that comes
Well,
out.
I can demo it to you. That's the
Demo
easiest
it.
way. So you have a phone, like
Yeah.
somebody's phone. Then you tap your card to their phone. That
Yeah.
notification pops up, and then nobody needs an app. And
Here it
that
is.
is my profile. And then when they click that, they save you directly to their phone.
So it actually eliminates a bunch of those steps too, of like taking the paper card and inputting the phone number and the email
All of
address
that.
and all those
Or
things.
forgetting about it. There's a statistic that says 9 out of 10 cards handed out are thrown away within a week. So
Does that OVU card also tag where you met the person?
not yet, but later on we want to add that too. So far we are eliminating the need to have an app, and not having an app, it has its own downfalls. But one of the good things is you're not limited by an application. You can just hand it to anybody. But in the future, we're thinking about that too. And I'm so proud of the way we're eliminating waste too. It's just a single card. You're keeping it in your wallet. And we want to even go the next step that we're working on is your Apple Wallet. So one of these cards gonna be your OVU card instead of even having a physical card altogether.
Which also eliminates a lot of people's concerns right now about touching
Yeah,
things and passing
exactly,
things that have been touched
exactly,
and all those things as
exactly,
well.
exactly.
This is fantastic. Well, let me ask you, are there any last words of wisdom for this particular interview, because we're going to do a live Q&A in a couple of weeks where everybody gets the opportunity to pick your brain, learn more about your incredible experiences, and get your advice on maybe how they can move forward better. But for today, what is the best way to wrap up and leave people on a high note?
Number one, putting yourself out there does wonders, and it's amazing how you just put either content on social media or your vulnerabilities, or going to these events. All of those combined gets you doors open that you didn't even know those doors existed. And number two, this whole idea of social capital and building that relationships, either by quality of the relationships or you're building, or putting yourself out there so you can meet more people. All of that is not only powerful, but I think it's a topic of next decade or two, as we are deviating from productions, and how last 100 years we've been talking about financial capital, and last 30 years we've been talking about invest in yourself, go get a degree. None of that matters going forward. A lot of people are not concerned about uh, you know um, degrees and formal universities to the extent they used to be. All those production values that 100 years ago with Ford and those manufacturing were, they're gone. Not that many people are concerned about productions. I think the higher level, you mentioned the hierarchy of Maslow, the higher you go on that, people are going to be super focused on how they're spending their time with the individuals in their life, and how they can bring value to them.
Thank you so much. One more question before we go.
Yes.
If people have questions in the interim, how can
Yes.
they reach you?
So you can search Reza Vee either on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, or you can, for simplicity, if you are watching this on a desktop, this is a new feature we're rolling out. You can scan that code with your mobile phone, or go to ovu.me/Reza. My digital business card lives there. Those are the ways you can reach out to me.
Thank you so much, Reza, and we'll look forward to talking to you in a couple of weeks.
Awesome.
Thank you.